So I was flipping through Instagram last week and I saw a story that was kind of rubbing me the wrong way. A San Francisco bookstore called the Booksmith has stopped selling the Harry Potter books in store after J.K. Rowling said she'd be creating what she's calling a women's fund. And according to the site for this women's fund, the J.K. Rowling Women's Fund offers legal funding support to individuals and organizations fighting to retain women's sex-based rights in the workplace, in public life, and in protected female spaces. It provides women with the means and confidence to bring to justice cases that make legal precedents, force policy change, and make positive contributions to women's lives in the future. End quote. J.K. Rowling also said she'd be using her own money for this fund, and that part alone set off a lot of people because they believe she'll be using this women's fund to support many of her transphobic causes, which is absolutely valid and definitely what is going on here, especially when you read what I just did about the women's fund. But a couple things get me about this story. First of all, people are acting like this is some sort of revelation that J.K. Rowling would be using her own money for this women's fund or any other campaign that she is funding, as if she's been pulling this money out of thin air with Harry Potter's wand. And on a related note, the bookstore in question, the Booksmith, said, in May of 2025, author J.K. Rowling publicly committed to using her private wealth from the Harry Potter series to develop this women's fund, an organization dedicated to removing transgender rights in the workplace, in public life, and in protected female spaces. With this announcement, we've decided to stop carrying her books. We don't know exactly what her women's fund will entail, but we know that we aren't going to be a part of it. A lot of people were applauding the Booksmith's move, and this is the other part that rubs me the wrong way. In my opinion, you cannot be against the banned book movement and also in support of this. And my concern is that removing books from any bookstore by the bookseller because they don't agree with the opinions of the author is a very slippery slope. It would be one thing if Harry Potter himself was suddenly being transphobic in the story, but the books are not inherently bad. And in fact, studies have shown that this series has taught children empathy.
So my feeling is, especially for like an independent bookseller, I think that they can choose to sell or not sell whatever they want. I don't personally have a dog in that fight because especially with something like Harry Potter, if one independent bookstore isn't carrying it and I'm like jonesing for Harry Potter, which why would I need another copy of that? I have 8 million. I could go around the corner to Barnes and Noble and just pick one up. From that perspective, I think it's about the bookseller doing what feels right to them to do. However, and I have a feeling we're going to get into some of this in a minute, so I won't jump ahead. What I do take issue with is hypocrisy and virtue signaling, which is part of this story.
So what Laura is talking about here is that, first of all, you can actually still get the Harry Potter books through the Booksmith's website. I went and looked. It's not in stock, but it says available to ship in 1 to 5 business days. Number 2, you can go to the same bookseller's website where you can buy Harry Potter through their online portal. You can get books by Donald Trump, Steve Bannon, Mike Pence, people who are actively trying to roll back LGBTQ rights. So why are we so focused on Harry Potter and J.K. Rowling? And why do you have to put a message in your bookstore? Why do you have to create a page on your website dedicated to this news? Why not just remove the books and let it go? And if anybody asks you in store, say, we have chosen not to sell them because of her views, and leave it at that. Why make a grand announcement about it? It seems like there is some grandstanding going on.
What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I mean, it just, like Laura was saying, it feels performative for sure, especially if they're not going to remove books from other problematic authors, whether that's children's authors or political figures. There are plenty of children's authors aside from J.K. Rowling who also were terrible people. So you better be
Dr.
removing
Seuss.
those books too. Dr. Seuss, Roald Dahl is also being brought up in the chat as well. I mean, yeah, you got to put your money where your mouth is if you're going to stand on business like this. That's how I feel.
Yeah.
Totally agreed.
And I just, seeing this story on Instagram a couple of weeks ago and then looking at the comments, there are all these applaud emojis. Oh, great job. It's like, if the tables were turned here and a Republican bookseller was removing books by Barack Obama or Michelle Obama from their shelves because this bookseller didn't like where he donated money to, would you also be in favor of that or okay with this notion? I don't think people would be. I think we would be enraged, just like we are by cancel culture and the banned books movement. This is dangerous to me. I don't think this should be applauded.
Mm-hmm. It's also, again, to your point, it's not even like they're not selling it at all. They're still able to make a profit off of it if you want to buy it from their website.
Yeah.
So what's the point? Like, what are they really applauding? They're still profiting and lining J.K. Rowling's pockets every time somebody buys it off their website, or every time somebody comes into the store and says, we actually don't carry that in store, but we can order it for you.
Right. People are applauding getting her. We got her. We got her, y'all.
But
We're removing her books.
But you
I know.
didn't. Like,
yeah, you didn't.
You are not. I'm sorry. No one is going to be able to move the needle monetarily to a point to get her to stop spewing her shitty views on Twitter.
Yeah.
She's just not going to stop and doing stuff. I think heavy virtue signaling with a veneer of hypocrisy actually kind of makes it worse, because that's the kind of shit that makes her double down and go on these like crazy ass like tweet thread sprees.
Yeah. My other thing is too, is like setting aside, the like the theme park, which is like an ongoing source of income, right? Like, if you're just looking at the books, because this is what it's being called into play here. I hate to say this because, I don't want to discourage people from protesting, but she's already made her millions off of that series. Probably 10 times over
at this point. Yeah.
And if you don't think that she's like, I mean, at that point, it's like her millions her fortune is passive income that just is making money on its own due to probably really good investments. So whether or not people stop buying these books every once in a while is not really going to make a big difference in her bottom line. Unfortunately, she's always going to have the funds to be a shitty person. And that really doesn't change whether everybody stops going to the theme park, everybody stops buying new books, everybody stops buying the movies, everybody decides to boycott this new TV show. It doesn't change the fact that she's going to be rich for her entire life.
Right.
Sorry to say.
Needless to say, we hate all of her views on trans people and how she's turned into a bully and the woman that she is today. We also hate when people are deciding to remove books on the basis of the author's personal opinions. And I think I think the left is kind of a mess on this issue too, because Laura, you mentioned Barnes & Noble a few minutes ago. Have you been into a Barnes & Noble lately? There's a giant wall dedicated to Harry Potter. I encourage you to go look at this giant Harry Potter wall that all the Barnes & Nobles have. Tons of merchandise, the books, obviously.
Of course they do.
Wands, Umbridge plate set I saw the other day. Where is the backlash around a place like Barnes & Noble selling so much Harry Potter merchandise? I bet a lot of these people who are hating J.K. Rowling and saying, don't buy the books, go to the theme parks, they're still buying books at Barnes & Noble. They're profiting off of Harry Potter bigly in the year 2025.
Yeah, that's the thing people forget is like, and I think, Pam, you were alluding to this earlier, but like, okay, if you want to boycott the TV show, that's fine, but are you not gonna have HBO Max? And I mean, respect.
Right.
Like, if you're like, yeah, you know what? I do not want any money funneled to her whatsoever. I will literally not spend money on anything knowingly if she gets a kickback from it. Total respect. But I think sometimes people, when they get on the virtue signaling train, and there's like moral superiority Olympics, it can become this like really quick tit for tat where it's like, well, I'm like
Yes.
I'm a little more righteous than you because I do this extra thing that you don't do.
Or at worst, you don't support trans rights because you are still, XYZ, which is inherently wrong. And listen, like I do this too. I think it's everybody's personal choice where they want to spend their hard-earned money and where they want that money to go towards. Again, like if it feels right in your heart for you to not do these things, that's fine. But I also think that we have to be realistic. And if you're really trying to make a change, I think there are better ways to utilize your time and also your money into combating all of this that she's, standing for now.
Yeah,
I agree.
I prefer less of the armchair activism and more of the going out and volunteering, going out and do something, make a donation if you want.
Or actively like supporting, like showing up for your trans friends.
Yeah.
And neighbors and family members, if and when possible.
I hate to say this, but when it comes to this battle against J.K. Rowling, we have lost and we're going to continue losing. Like there's no silencing her. There's no combating her. Like we're talking about here. Yeah, you can stop buying butterbeers at the theme park and buying the books and all that. But it's not going to make a difference. Harry Potter is going to be in our lives, our pop culture lives. It will be present for the rest of our lives. Period. It is another Star Wars. It's here to stay. Unless the Harry Potter show bombs beyond all belief, and there's no reason, in my opinion, to think that, Harry Potter is here to stay forever.
And listen, to that point, I understand that like, unfortunately, because of what she stands for now, it has completely ruined it for some people. But I also think that like, it's not wrong to like, let your children read those books, because setting aside who she is and whether she set out to do this or not, she unfortunately did raise a generation of people that by far and more often than like the small amount of hateful people that are still in fandom are fighting for good stuff. I just think about like,
look at it.
Like, for example, like the Harry Potter Alliance, which was like big when we were younger and stuff like that. And look at how many good people came out of just being fans of this book, growing up on this series. Like it did more good than it did bad. And I think sometimes we have to remember that regardless of whether that was her intent or not, she ended up raising a generation of people that by far and large are standing up for what's right. And we're seeing that as a result of people boycotting or expressing these hurt opinions or staying in fandom despite that, to show people that are in the minority that there are still people in fandom that care about them and will fight to protect their rights. So
yeah, and I've seen the point raised, and I'm not saying this is a reason to continue supporting J.K. Rowling or Harry Potter, but I have seen it raised that J.K. Rowling has also done a lot of good in the world with charitable contributions outside of things like this women's fund. She has the Lumos organization, which is doing important work. She probably donates to a lot of causes she doesn't post about, I would assume. Any good celebrity is probably quietly donating to a lot of good causes that we would agree with. So it's a very tricky situation. I just don't want to see books removed.
Yeah. I mean, again, if it's an independent bookstore, I think they get to decide what they stock, right? If it's like a big, chain, obviously that's a different circumstance, right? But if it's a mom and pop shop, independently owned, I mean, if you don't want to sell Harry Potter, don't sell Harry Potter. But that doesn't mean just sell Harry Potter through your website.
Right.
Like, again, you're not doing anything if you do it that way.
Yeah. So I did also want to share an alternate perspective because the three of us seem pretty aligned on this. When I did post about this on Instagram, one of our listeners, Jacob, actually replied to my comment. And I will say I got at least more people supporting what I was saying versus people who weren't supporting what I was saying, but maybe those people who are on the opposite side of me just weren't coming forward. But Jacob did disagree with me, and Jacob said banned books are banned because people don't like the content within the books. Harry Potter isn't being sold because we shouldn't be supporting a disgusting bigot who is actively trying to hurt innocent people. Booksellers have free reign to decide which books they do or do not carry. As having worked for one for a considerable amount of time, they choose every book that comes into their shop, so they are already doing this all the time and have every right to. Banning books in schools and libraries, on the other hand, is not something that should happen. Libraries and schools are, for the most part, government entities and are not supposed to let personal bias dictate what their catalogs hold. Do a majority of libraries and some schools have Mein Kampf available for checkout? Yes. Do a lot of booksellers sell it? No. Is the author a bigot, bully, etc., whose book doesn't do much beyond perpetuate heinous thinking? Yes. Same thing, says Jacob. End quote. So I appreciated the perspective, especially from somebody who worked in a bookstore. I just wanted to get that out there because I'm sure some of our listeners won't agree with what we're saying today.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point about libraries. I mean, libraries are accessible to everybody that is within their vicinities. And bookstores are only accessible to people that have money, right? Like you can go in and browse, but you can't probably can't sit there and read a whole book. Someone might be like, hey, you're going to buy that, but nobody's going to stop you from doing that at a library. So I do think that's an important distinction.
Fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do worry that something like this, I haven't really seen right-wing circles pick this up much, this bookseller removing Harry Potter. But I do worry if this is going to be a give an inch, take a mile type of thing where they go even further and harder because of what one bookstore in San Francisco does. I could see this being a talking point for Trump, this type of activity. So,
yeah. And I think and I think I expressed this to y'all when we were planning for this episode, but stuff like this happening on the left does frustrate me because it's these exact kinds of examples that get overgeneralized onto the rest of us and allow that, caricature of the crazy liberal, the liberal mob. And it's like, no, most people have the capacity for nuanced thought, right? Like it's, yeah.
And we're trying to inject some nuance here by also giving the full picture about this bookstore. Still selling the books online, going out of their way to make an announcement about it, selling books by Trump and Pence and Bannon. I'm sure there's plenty of other right-wing people whose books they sell, and those people actively use their money too to fight progress in LGBTQ rights. So it's
they're in a better position of power than J.K. Rowling is, which should be even more terrifying because they're lawmakers. All she can do is fund people, but they can actually enact change, which is even more terrifying.
The Booksmith is an American business in San Francisco, California, paying federal taxes to Donald Trump. I just want some consistency.